Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today I wanted to do a video on all the different types of crankbait rods that I use for all the different categories of crankbaits out there that you're going to use to catch fish. And it kind of goes with the video I just did recently, which was all about breaking down the fishing line for crankbaits, which I think is ultra important, even more so than the rod choice in a lot of situations. So go check out that video. Pretty much break down every single category from lipless crankbaits to, you know, magnum plugs like the 10XD, and we're going to do the same thing here, but with fishing rods. So let's talk about the first category of baits. That's going to be a lipless crankbait. Lipless crankbaits are very different than the other ones because they don't have a lip or a bill, whatever you want to call it, and they are really primarily a shallow power fishing tactic where you're fishing around grass. That's traditionally where you're going to be using a lipless crankbait, is fishing it around, you know, some type of submerged vegetation that you're trying to rip it out of, and so the rod choice that I've chosen over the years, and it's something that has taken me a long time to kind of come to the realization that this is the rod that I want to use. You know, a little bit of backstory I think is really important because, you know, in the beginning, you know, everybody talks about using a composite rod or some type of parabolic bend rod for any crankbait, including lipless crankbaits. And I really tried for many years using composite and fiberglass rods, which hardly anybody makes fiberglass rods anymore. And you know, I just hated fishing a lipless crankbait with those soft action rods. You know, it was just really hard to clear the hooks of grass and rip those crankbaits out of the grass and kind of have a really good sensitive feel for what that bait is doing. And so for years I battled with those composite rods and went to, you know, some heavy composite rods, but finally in the last couple of years I just decided to throw it on one of my favorite all-around rods, which is a 7.3 medium heavy graphite rod. This is the Versa series from Fitzgerald Rods, and the reason why I like the 7.3 medium heavy, and it's really my go-to for everything from spinner baits, lipless crankbaits, of course, chatterbaits, some top waters, you know, all these different types of reaction baits that I'm throwing on a regular basis. I'm throwing on this rod right here, the 7.3 medium heavy. It's just a rod that I feel very comfortable with. And the reason I like this rod is because it's a little bit softer. It's very slight, but it's a little bit softer than a traditional fast action medium heavy graphite rod. And so it's very slight. You can still fish a worm and bottom bouncing techniques on this rod. And in fact, if you're looking for one rod to do pretty much anything, you know, one all-purpose rod, the 7.3 medium heavy Versa is a really good choice. But to make a long story short, I love this rod because it allows me to really use a lipless crankbait in the thickest grass and to be able to clear those hooks and have a good feel for it. I know exactly what's going on with fluorocarbon line. I know exactly what's going on with that lipless crankbait, which for me is super important. Yeah, you're gonna have to be a little bit more ginger with the fish as you're fighting them in, but I think that I get way more bites with this heavier rod, this less limber rod, fishing around the grass than I do with the composite rod. Now that being said, you know, there's certain times that you're throwing a lipless crankbait in open water. You're not really contacting any cover, you're just throwing it out there and reeling back in. Composite rod's perfectly great for that. No problems at all switching over to a rod like the new heavy action 7.3 composite series from Fitzgerald, which we're going to be talking about soon. But traditional lipless crankbait bite, early spring in the grass, 7.3 medium heavy Versa. That's the one. All right, so let's move on. Let's talk about, because they're very similar, you know, in the type of situation you're going to be fishing them, you know, shallow water power fishing. Let's talk about the you know, shallow diving crankbaits, small shallow diving crankbaits, you know, like a Strike King 1.5, you know, any of those square bills, anything like that. This right here is a 7-foot medium heavy Versa series rod again. Again, it's graphite. It's very sensitive. It's got a little bit slower action than a traditional fast action, in my opinion, just from what it feels like. And I just love this rod. I can feel exactly what's going on with the crankbait at any time. You know, it doesn't need to be a long rod. That's why I use a 7-footer, because I'm casting it around shallow cover, you know, making short casts, short roll casts, and it's really important to be able to feel your way around down there. So the 7-foot medium heavy is my choice for the shallow diving crankbaits, those smaller crankbaits. And it just tends to do a really good in a lot of different environments. And so that's my #1 choice for those. If I start getting into like the 2.5, some of the bigger shallow diving crankbaits, a lot of times I'm gonna throw them on the 7.3 medium heavy, just like the lipless crankbaits. All right, so moving on to what I call, it's a category of crankbait that I call finesse crankbaits, okay? Some of them are, you know, they're not real finessey, they're not super tiny, but they are smaller bodied crankbaits with longer bills. You know, something like a Bandit 200 series, you know, a Straight King Series 3, anything, a Wiggle Wart is a really good example. Anything that has a smaller body, but it still has that slightly longer bill, made to dive down to 6 to 8 feet. That's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about finesse crankbaits. So this right here, again, the Versa series, you see a pattern here. I love the Versa series for reaction baits. This right here is a 7.3 medium action Versa series, and this one is just really, really good. It's a really good finesse crankbait rod. It flexes just enough to allow me to cast those smaller baits real far. It's got the perfect you know, bend to it to allow me to fight those fish, and just overall I love this rod. And again, because it's graphite, it's really, really sensitive, so I can feel exactly what's going on down there with the crankbait. You know, if I get a leaf on it, I know immediately if there's something, you know, snagged on the hooks and I need to reel it back in real quick. I know everything, and it allows me to free up whatever gets stuck on those hooks a lot of the time. You know, a lot of times when I'm fishing a bait like the Wiggle Wart, it's during those times of the year where you've got a lot of leaves that have fallen off the trees and they're on the bottom of the lake, and with this rod I can really kind of, you know, rip them free from those leaves. So those are a big nuisance that time of year, but that's a really good rod for those finesse style crankbaits. All right, so now let's talk about deep diving crankbaits. You know, anything that dives from 10 to 20 feet on a regular cast, that's what we're talking about. You know, Strike King 5XDs, Series 5, or the 6XDs. Anything in that kind of category, that's what I'm gonna be using this rod right here for. This right here is the Fitzgerald All-Purpose Series 7.3 Heavy Composite Rod. This is a new rod this year, and let me tell you, I have really fallen in love with this rod because I'm not a composite guy. I really am not. Over the years, I just don't like that bend as much as I like the sensitivity of a graphite rod. But this rod right here has really made me rethink my stance on composite rods. One of the things that composite rods can do better than a graphite rod is it allows you to make a longer cast. You're essentially utilizing that bend in this rod, that parabolic bend, to load up the rod on the cast and make a really long cast. And with deep diving crankbaits, that's really, really critical. And also allowing those fish a split second, just a fraction of a second more, to suck in that bait without you reacting is also really important with deep diving crankbaits. So the 7.3 heavy composite rod, I've caught a ton of fish on it. This is a rod that I attribute to my 3rd place finish at the Toyota Series recently, and is just a really, really good rod. Love the components, love the length of the reel handle. Personally, I don't like a reel handle that's real long. It's just got the perfect balance, and I love it, man. I don't lose a lot of fish on this either. So really, really good rod for those 5XDs, 6XDs, anything in that 10 to 20 foot range. All right, so now let's talk about the giant crankbaits, the Magnum style crankbaits like the 8XD, the 10XD, or any of those. This right here, you need a rod that can lob those things around and can really, you know, cast them real far. And this right here is a 7/8 medium heavy Versa Series rod. Again, a Versa Series. I love this series of rod for reaction baits. And this rod right here is what I refer to as my ledge special. You know, I love fishing this rod for ledge baits, everything from swim baits to hair jigs to you know, anything I'm fishing on ledges, you know, those big heavy baits. This is a really good rod, and it's no different for the big Magnum style crankbaits. The 7/8 medium heavy does a really good job. It's definitely big enough to handle those big plugs. It has plenty of bend with those heavy lures to cast them very, very far, and it just overall feels right for that size bait. And so you're not going finesse with a big plug like that. So the 7/8 medium heavy is really where it's at for me. I also use the 7/6 medium heavy, but the 7/8 just, to me, just feels just right because it has that extra length to it to allow me to make longer casts. So that is my choice for those big ones. And that's pretty much the breakdown. I gave you the goods. This is everything that I use for crankbaiting, and I really don't deviate from that much. Of course, my arsenal is always evolving, but this is the arsenal that I've come down to after years and years of experimentation with different types of rods and different compositions of blanks. So anyways, hopefully this video helps you. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, and also comment below if you have any questions or have any comments. You know where to comment below. Thanks for watching. I'm going to see you guys out on the water. Take care.
To check out the full line of Fitzgerald rods, check out 44tackle.com.